Every journey has turning points, even the journey that I'm on with this very podcast. And I'm being obedient to that, my friend. And as Oprah says, when you know better, you do better. Hi, my friend, and welcome to the Bounce Back Black Woman podcast. I'm Del, and with God's help, I've overcome some of the toughest trials in life that I could ever have imagined. Do you find yourself struggling to move beyond a heartbreak or a hardship, asking God, why me? Well, I'm here to help women just like you heal and build the resilience to overcome life's greatest trials. If you long for joy and confidence again, this podcast is for you. So grab your headphones and those hardships. Let's talk. Hey there, my friend, and welcome back to Bounce Back Black Woman. Before we dive into today's episode, I'd like to take just a moment and pause a review that was left on Apple Podcasts earlier this season. This review truly touched my heart, and it reinforced my why about this entire podcast. And here's what it said. It was left by JLC444, and it's titled A Safe Place to Land with a 5-star rating. And the review said this podcast feels like a safe place to land, warm, loving, and deeply supportive. Del offers gentle reminders of our shared humanity, reflections that feel like a comforting hug, and questions that spark meaningful introspection and healing. That review captures in a nutshell the very why of why I decided to produce this podcast in the first place. These reviews really mean the world to me, my friends, and so if you haven't left one yet, it's a beautiful way to keep this movement growing and keep getting this podcast in front of the women and men who need to hear the messages that I share. So, all right, with that, let's get into today's episode. If you've been with me since the beginning, you know that I launched this podcast with one focus in mind, and that was helping women bounce back after heartbreak. But as I've been walking through my own life and listening to you, I realized something that I know that wasn't translating for everyone. Heartbreak isn't just about relationships. It's about all the trials that shake us to our core. Loss, setbacks, transitions, disappointments, and even just those simple moments when the world itself feels heavy. Every journey has turning points, even the journey that I'm on with this very podcast. And I'm being obedient to that, my friend. And as Oprah says, when you know better, you do better. And so today I want to share a couple of turning points for the podcast. The first one is about the importance of words and effective communication. And if you've listened to the last episode, you already know how important words are to me. And not just any words, the right words. I believe so much in the right words that I've shifted the tagline of this podcast. And here's what the new tagline reads. Build resilience after life's toughest trials through God's love. And so, because of that shift, even more people who need to hear these encouraging, faith-filled messages can find them without feeling like they have to have gone through a breakup with a partner, because that's what heartbreak means to so many people. But really, this podcast is about resilience. And for me, that's personal. Having faced divorce, widowhood, career upheaval, cross-country moves, and so much more in my 60 years of life. And in every single one of those trials, the thing that carried me wasn't simply my own strength. It was God's love. The second thing that I am thrilled to share on this episode is that Bounce Back Black Woman, the podcast, is now officially ranked in the top 10% of podcasts globally, according to the global podcast platform ListenNotes. Now, first let me say that that is all God and His faithfulness. When you stay open and willing to follow God's promptings, He rewards that. And secondly, behind God, that is because of you. You listening, you sharing, you reviewing, and just showing up with me each and every week. So let's get into today's meat of the episode. Resilience. I mentioned that resilience is one of the core pillars of this podcast, but it's also one of those words that people like to throw around. And they throw it around almost as if it means just push through, be tough, grind it out. But that's not resilience, my friend. At least it's not the kind of resilience that lasts. And it's definitely not the kind of resilience that's rooted in staying soft and trusting God. True resilience isn't about pretending that you're okay or having this fake it until you make it mindset or just deciding to pick yourself up by the bootstraps and get on with it. True resilience is about trusting something deeper than your circumstances. And for me, and so many more of us, that something deeper is God's love. So when you build resilience from that place, you don't just bounce back. You come back and rise stronger with more wisdom, more compassion, and more faith. And so I want to ask you, what words, phrases, and truths are you anchoring yourself to right now? The verse that's been on my heart is Isaiah 40:31. But those who trust in the Lord will find new strength. They will soar high on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint. And you'll notice that it doesn't say those who hustle harder or those who pretend everything's fine. It says those who trust in the Lord. And that, my friend, is where renewal comes from. That is where resilience takes root. Okay, so I told you that I'm pivoting. Here's why pivoting when you're guided to really matters. When your words or actions don't match your spirit, it hurts. You feel out of alignment. You feel like you're right at the foot of the mountain, but you can't really see a way to climb up. And that's how I began to feel with the old tagline. While I knew that heartbreak wasn't only about a romantic breakup, it slowly became evident that not everybody else did. Yes, women had found this podcast, and while I am indescribably grateful for that, the truth is that some of the women who need it might have been walking right past it because their pain wasn't what they would have described as heartbreak. Because in our society, often we have such a narrow view of that word, thinking that it only has to do with breakups. And it was then that I accepted that fact that the tagline that I had originally felt led to use didn't fully hold the weight of what this podcast and this community is really all about. So changing it wasn't a marketing move. It was a communication priority. It was spiritual alignment. It was me saying, okay, God, I hear you. This is what you want me to declare. And honestly, it feels freeing. Because if you know me, you know that words mean everything to me. And if you don't believe that, make sure to check out the previous episode where I talked a lot about the tattoos that I have and why I have them. So here's my takeaway for you this week, my friend. Find your anchor words. You know, those words that remind you who you are and whose you are when life feels like it's the toughest that it's ever been. And here's your journal prompt. What words or phrase remind you of God's love when life feels hardest? Write it down and keep it close this whole week. Now, before we wrap the episode, let me just say again, thank you, thank you, thank you. This podcast being in the top 10% globally is not about me. It's about us and the way that God is using these messages to reach hearts and change lives. And I'm excited about what's coming next. So here's a sneak peek. Starting with episode 26, we are diving into a 3-part series on resilience in uncertain times. It is no surprise, or should be no surprise to those of you who know me, that with everything happening in our country right now, in our politics, in our communities, that we need an anchor to stay steady. And we need to be asking the question, how do we keep our humanity when the headlines are pulling us apart? So I'll be tackling that with you, my friend, one episode at a time. I'm even hoping to bring a guest or two in to have a conversation about how we can stay rooted in God's love to build our resilience in these turbulent times. So make sure you're subscribed and stay ready. And if you haven't yet, today I want you to go to bouncebackblackwoman.com and subscribe to my weekly insider newsletter. Because throughout this series and far beyond it, I'm going to go much deeper than we do here on the podcast, which will really challenge you to stand in the face of trials, all of them. And so until then, my friend, I want you to remember to lean on God's love and keep listening, keep sharing, keep the faith, and keep bouncing back. Well, that's it for today, my friend. I really hope this episode inspired, encouraged, or just plain comforted you. If so, please share it with a friend who might be struggling in her own healing journey. And if you take a moment to leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts, you'll help other women find encouragement through their heartbreak. Remember that God is holding your hand along this journey, and guess what? I'm holding the other. Life is short, so bounce back, Black woman.